Good morning, and welcome to another edition of Talkable San Leandro, a series of community conversations with people in the city that make a difference. Today we're pleased to have Dan Dillman with us. He's running for mayor of San Leandro. Dan is the proprietor of the Bow Theater. He's maintaining a piece of San Leandro heritage. So thank you, Dan, for keeping that going and keeping it moving along a path. I know it's a difficult, being an entrepreneur, I know kind of those steps. Dan, I wanted to start just by asking you just a little bit about your personal life. Not too many details.
Right.
But where did young Dan Dillman grow up? Where, what was your trajectory into San Leandro?
Sure. Yeah. I was born in Oakland, raised in Hayward, San Lorenzo.
Where in
San
Oakland?
Leandro.
I was born in Oakland as well.
Kaiser Hospital.
Okay.
Kaiser Hospital, and
where did you live in Oakland?
I lived over by Lake Merritt, off of Apple Avenue.
Okay. All right.
And I probably could remember the address. But most of my childhood was spent in Hayward. In San Lorenzo.
Brothers and sisters, big family?
I have one brother. I have one immediate brother, but I really have I have four brothers.
Okay.
Stepbrothers.
I got it.
But I still call them brothers.
Sure.
And so I grew up in Hayward, San Leandro, San Lorenzo, Castro Valley, Oakland. Went to Sunset High School, went to Oakland Tech as well. Kind of bounced between those two schools for a while.
And when did you come into San Leandro? When did you start?
My wife, I was in San Leandro all the time as a teenager because the wife and I have been dating since 15, right?
Okay.
So we've been married 27 years.
Wow. Okay.
Been together over 30, years. So our first apartment was in San Leandro on 150th, just down the street from the historic Bow Theater. So it was pretty cool because that's when I discovered the Bow Theater anyway, and I won't make it a long story, but we were at McDonald's across the street. That was dining. That was going out.
Right. We were there
when
too.
we first got married, and we're sitting there eating in the parking lot and looked across the street and said, "Have you ever seen that theater before?" And so all this time, always
Just
driving by,
it.
never noticed it.
Yeah.
And so that was the first time that we saw it. And so we kind of flash back and have
good memories.
Good memories about that.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about politics because you're running for mayor. It's and so. I want to ask you about rent control. I kind of gone through these same questions with the other candidates. What do you think about rent control? Regardless of whether Costa-Hawkins is repealed or not.
Right. I'm all about being centered and balanced. And that's definitely what my campaign's about. So right now, the rental situation is a little out of balance. So just cause evictions, we should absolutely do that. Anyone who looks into that policy that's been initiated in other cities will see that it's fair on both sides. And for those who don't know what it is, it just simply means, look, if you have a renter who's not paying on time, who's causing real damage to your facility, you have just cause to evict them.
Sure.
But it also protects the renter that says, hey, if the renter puts a Dan Dillman sign in the window and you as the landlord doesn't like, prefers another candidate,
Sure.
and doesn't like Dan Dillman, which I can't see how that'd be possible.
Hey.
But they can't have bias and say, hey, I'm kicking you out,
Right.
just for no excuse, no true reason.
But raising the rent, they have complete prerogative to do that. The owners still.
They do, but I personally believe that there should be some protections.
Yeah.
I think that if a landlord has a good renter and someone who's been there and has paying rent on time and is a good steward of the property, that they should be locked in, within reason, right? Landlords have taxes go up, so that's understandable that a little bit of that should be passed on to their renter.
Right.
But I see it as it could be hurtful to someone who's on fixed income, and if the rent's going up $100 a year, in 5 years, that's $500 extra a month. Yeah. That could put them out of that home.
It's a burden.
So there should be some balance there. And I think a rental board with some power and authority to be that balance would be effective too.
Okay. I've talked to a couple other candidates. Since you're kind of new coming into the political realm, there have been some decisions made. And being a small business person, I know that kind of entrepreneurial mindset because I am a small business person.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to ask you about flavored tobacco. I know that San Leandro banned flavored tobacco in the city and put limits on tobacco sales in the city.
Right.
Well, how do you feel about that?
My personal first, I don't smoke. I don't support flavored tobaccos in the sense of like, hey, I want them myself. But I absolutely am against, I would not have initiated that policy. One, it can't be enforced. Two, I believe in free will. I also believe that an entrepreneur and these businesses should be allowed to sell what's legal at the federal and state level without restrictions being put on them, because adults can make their own decisions.
But children, that's a different story. They've proven kids flock to these things. They taste good. Right?
Well, then we should be enforcing, and we should have, whether that be stings or people should be reporting places that are selling to underage, because there's already laws that you can't sell to underage. You need the store owners need to be checking IDs when they're selling anything to verify someone's age. Right. And so the protection is already there for the youth. Now, if the youth are going to go in there and attempt to do something, buying something that they're not allowed to buy, it's the same with alcohol. Alcohol is still sold there. So if we're not checking IDs when people are going there to buy alcohol, then what's the point? It's illegal, but they're still doing it because no one is enforcing. So I just think that we're hurting the businesses too, and there needs to be a balance. Once again, I'm all for protecting the youth, but I think that it's not something I would have done.
Very good. At San Lorenzo High now, the kids there have to secure their cell phones in a green plastic bag. It's locked. It gets unlocked at the end of the day with some kind of magnetic wand. I wanted to ask you about that, just to see what you think with regards to how that might work in San Leandro schools, if you think something like that would be a good idea.
I would love to try that in San Leandro. We are so connected nowadays that we're disconnected.
Yeah.
There are families and children, and I witness it, I experience it within my own home. The kids are texting themselves from across the couch, from across the table. Right? So don't get me wrong, this is a wonderful tool.
Sure.
It is a blessing, but I think we can take a break from that and connect eye to eye and speak with each other a little more. So in the schools, there's a part of me that says, I want my kid, if he was in school, my kids have all graduated now from San Leandro High, but I would want, if I needed to communicate with my child, I would want to have access to them. So where's that balance that says, hey, they can still have access if needed, but to where they can hopefully pay attention and not have so much distraction.
Yeah, there you go. So let's talk about a fun subject, debt. Right, San Leandro's in debt. Every California city is in debt. It's a systemic problem. If you go to pensiontracker.org, you can kind of see 500 California cities and what level of debt they are. The last data was in 2015, where San Leandro was 94. Number one being the worst, 94. And so, I know that Dan Dillman's not going to solve the problem, but do you see ways to mitigate the problem? I mean, ultimately, it seems that it's going to have to be a California fix, not a citywide fix. But what do you think?
Well, I believe that the problem can be solved. I do believe that I can solve the problem, but when I say I speak of the whole entire community. Because if we're in harmony and in union with the idea of the solution, then it gets done. And so we need to be lobbying and advocating with our partners, the county, the state, the federal governments, actively, not saying, hey, is someone doing it? We should already know that we're doing it. So that's number one.
So we're working with the League of California Cities, perhaps.
Working with them, reaching out to Congress, reaching out to our senators, reaching out to our assembly members, and actually lobbying to solve this problem, because it's not just our problem. Secondly, if that can't happen, then it's going to be up to us to solve it. And one of my big ideas is a bond or a property tax, or a combination of the two, that knocks out the unfunded liabilities and also puts $250 million in our coffers, and we could start making really impressive, innovative moves in the private and public sector. And then also start creating residual income. And if we solve the unfunded liabilities problem, we solve every other problem. And some would say, well, Dan, that's a crazy idea. Who would do that? Well, let me tell you something. Hayward right now has a $380 million bond on this ballot.
Okay.
And it's strictly for schools.
Wow.
If they had done that for the city themselves, they would solve all of their financial problems. And I'm for supporting schools, but the state has the biggest role in that.
Right.
And so basically, for those who may think that idea is too big or unachievable, It is being proposed by another city right this minute, and that solution would solve our problems and every other problem that we think we have.
Okay. Speaking of problems, let's talk about the marina. And it's not so much a problem, but we haven't broken ground, and there are mitigating circumstances, sea level rise, the floors all have to be raised 30 inches. It adds a lot of cost to putting a building out there. What do you think about the mix of buildings out there? Is the plan today as relevant or as doable as it was 3 years ago, considering what we know now? And what do you think we should, the future of the marina is?
I am convinced that the universe is working in our favor with the marina. My personal opinion, and I can only speak for myself at this point, and those that I've spoke with, is that the current plan isn't the right plan.
Okay.
Don't get me wrong, there's been a lot of effort and a lot of work put into getting something done. So everyone's like, hey, we got something, we agreed on it, and by God, we're finally here. But look, now we've got this other obstacle that is stopping development. And there's a purpose to that, and I believe it's an opportunity. So to say that we now need to raise the buildings 30 inches, 3 feet, whatever it is really an excuse in my perception of it, because we already knew about climate change and the effects it was having on the ocean and the sea level years ago. Right. And so that should have been, if that wasn't a forethought in the planning, then there was a critical falling apart in the planning. And so to me, I say this is an opportunity. So let's not worry about it, let's not be upset, let's step back and let's figure out the best plan. I believe we can have a Coney Island, Santa Cruz Beach boardwalk, dining, community, tourist, family, nature plan that doesn't upset anything and is a wonderful balance from what we have and what we could have.
Okay, well, listen, we're coming to the kind of the end of the period here. I wanted to give you a chance just to address the citizenry of San Leandro with any other ideas that you might have, or the Dan Dillman pitch, if it were.
I believe that we can solve our homeless problem. I believe that people who are living out of their cars, their vans, their mobile homes should have a safe space and place to live. And I believe we can do that. I believe we can partner with some of our nonprofits in town, whether that's Davis Street. There's properties around town that could be utilized. The old Dick's restaurant property could turn into a community kitchen. We can have tiny homes on that property. We can make the foliage beautiful. It's kind of away from the downtown. And it's right next to Davis Street, to where we can then provide mental health services and other medical services to them and the rest of the community. I believe that we're a community of infinite possibility, that anything that we can imagine, we can do. And that any problem that we may perceive is achievable through our imagination. Steve Jobs imagined an Apple computer. Everyone told him he was crazy. Most likely you've got an Apple computer in the palm of your hand today. So with our imagination, all things are possible.
Great. Dan, thank you for coming in and joining me, and good luck in this race. And thank you to our viewing audience for tuning in to Talkable San Leandro.
DanDillman.com to learn more about my platform. I have a wealth of information there, and I hope to have your vote. You get 3, and I hope to have your first, but I'll take your second or third as well. Thank you.
Thank you.